Okay, yalla. So there's something very interesting in terms of Parashat Miketz and also Chanukah. There is, I would say, a semi-well-known, it's out there, a lot of people mention it, remez that I want to share with you and try to make some sense out of. There's a deep Kabbalistic sefer called the Megaleh Amukot. Megaleh Amukot writes something that I'm sure a lot of people have heard, and it's hard to wrap your head around. He writes, he's very cryptic in a lot of what he writes, and he writes that the Gematria of Yosef is the same Gematria as Antiochus. This is what he gives us, but he doesn't like go into it and explain what. So now, what do I do with this? The Gematria of Yosef, the numerical value of Yosef, is the same as Antiochus, and he writes it's also the same as Melech Yavan, the king of the Greeks. Okay, great. So Yosef has something in common with Antiochus. The question is, what is the lesson here? And so with Hanukkah, in my personal experience, if you want to find most of the ink that was spilled writing about Hanukkah, you got to go to the Hasidim. Because in terms of our pshat, first of all, there is no Masechet Hanukkah in our, there's no Mishnah Hanukkah, right? The men know this because we just learned it. There's a Masechet Megillah for Purim, but there's no Masechet Hanukkah. Inside Masechet Shabbat, there's a couple of pages. Because we're talking about lighting for Shabbat, so we talk about lighting for Hanukkah and do some laws there. Tells the story real quick. It doesn't really get so much into it. We have the Alani Sim. That's like, okay, a little bit of a story. It mentions Hanukkah in the Mishnah from time to time, but not as the story of Hanukkah. It's just like halakhically, like if someone, like in the laws of damages, it'll say, well, if someone's Hanukkah menorah lit fire, does he have to pay, God forbid, does he have to pay for the neighbor's damage? In other words, it'll mention it in passing, like we know Hanukkah is a thing. But to talk about Hanukkah and sit and talk and explain to us what exactly happened, we don't really find too much information. I always mention this. Last year we had the Hanukkah breakfast, I think, the brunch. There's the book of Maccabees. That's not in our Tanakh, right? The Christian Tanakh has it, so they can study that. But even that doesn't talk about the miracle. It talks more about wars. It's like a documentary about the history of the wars. Josephus was a historian. He was Jewish, but I mean, he didn't act very Jewish. He didn't talk about the miracle of the lights either. He talked about the wars. So there's not much. If you want to start your search for the truth about Hanukkah and the depth and the layers of Hanukkah, you're at a loss. The Mikubalim, the Kabbalists, which is the Hasidim. Hasidim are Kabbalists. That's what they are. Hasidim are Mikubalim. Everything they do is Arizal and Zohar and Kabbalah. They really open it up largely. And so I used for material here the Zera Shimshon and the Peri Sadiq. Peri Sadiq, Reb Tzadok HaKohen. Reb Tzadok HaKohen was a great thinker, and he has a set of Sifrim I have in my house, but it's very hard to read. It's very cryptic also. And Sifat Emet is another one. I'm sure you've heard these names before. Sifat Emet, very cryptic also. And lastly, the Hidushei Harim, from Ger. The Hasidim love Hanukkah. And so it's to them we have to go for some explanation of when you have a question, you got to go to the Hasidic Sefarim. First step one is to buy them. Right? So you got to buy this Hasidic Sefarim. And so what does this mean, Yosef HaSadiq? Yosef is the value of Antiochus. Like, why are you telling me this? The Zera Shimshon also brings from the Zohar Hadash, which I did research, but the Zera Shimshon expounds on it more than the Zohar says. And the Zohar says, we know that the second Beit HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinat Hinam, faithless hatred. Says the Zera Shimshon in the name of the Zohar, when did this start? When did the baseless hatred start that ruined our Beit HaMikdash? When the 10 tribes sold Yosef down to Egypt. That's really what started the ball rolling, and we're still paying the price for that action. The 10 brothers selling Yosef, it seems we're not finished paying the debt for what they did. Not only that, The Zohar writes that there has to be a punishment for what they did. Selling their brother down. I mean, first of all, they wanted to kill the brother. And second of all, selling your brother to Egypt was literally a death sentence. We have to appreciate with the story, like we get into the Tanakh story, put yourself in the time of the story. It was a death sentence. Either he would be it was like human trafficking. Yosef was also a gorgeous kid. It was literally human trafficking. Says the Zohar, 10 tribes, and Yosef was away for 22 years. 10 times 22, that should be 220 years of punishment, says the Zohar. The 22 years he was away for each of you. And we have to pay that as a nation. And the Zohar says maybe the death of each one should take away a year. The Zohar is going through the numbers. So we can go down and make it 212 years. Says the Zera Shimshon, what year into the second temple did Antiochus come and take over? Interesting. It was the 213th year, just about the midway point from the second temple. 213th year, which means we had the temple for 212 years until we lost it. And then we got it back. The war was years, it took a long time. Riv, fight. Riv, Vahiriv, Resh Yod Bet. Riv. The gematria of a fight, of an argument, is 212. Hashem said there was an argument between the 10 tribes and Yosef, and there's an argument between us, their children. I'll give you the gematria of Riv, of fight, to figure this stuff out. After 212 years, the gematria of Riv, you lost it. I'm taking it away. Comes year 213. I'm sending Antiochus, who has the same numerical value as Yosef. I'm taking the temple away from you until you figure this stuff out. This is the words of the Zera Shimshon. It's obviously a very heavy connection, and it can't be a coincidence that Chanukah falls out on these parashiyot. The Shla writes, as I'm sure everyone knows, the Shla writes, there's always a connection from the Parashat HaShavua to what's going on in the calendar, even though you would say, nah. If you're just on an intellectual level, you would say no. Especially, it wasn't always the custom of the Jewish people to finish the Torah in 1 year. Some people used to finish it in 3 years. I think the conservative right now do it in 3 years. Pretty sure. The Gemara brings it. Some people, so every Parashah was a third the size of this. That would be nice. Imagine that. My job would be a lot easier. Every Parashah would be a third of the size as it was now. And so therefore the Parashiyot that were so used to falling out, you have to throw away half the books that connect the calendar to the Parashat HaShavua. However, the Shlah HaKadosh, who was a great Kabbalist, he writes, there always is a connection. Who made our calendar? Ezra Sofed made the Torah reading schedule, and Hillel Hazaken made the calendar. So between Ezra HaSofed and Hillel, there is genius, says the Shlah HaKadosh, to tie the times together. There obviously is a connection between Yosef and the brothers and Chanukah. And so this is what I want to tell you now what I started talking about Friday night. I think it's a very powerful and practical lesson. And so I apologize if you heard it, but I want to expand on it. We know Ma'aseh Avot Siman Lebanim. What the parents do gives power to what the children do. This is not only a magical thing. It's also in some, they say, for example, look at Olympic records. I don't know exactly the details, but it happens frequently. Let's say, for example, someone swims in 3.2 seconds, he swims the lap. The second he breaks the record, everyone else can do it in 3.2 seconds. Whenever someone starts something, he creates into the world that now this chidush in the world, that this is doable. That's why records keep getting broken. And so they put into the air this hatred. It goes for good and bad. Or we see Abraham Avinu. He put into this air of Vayakom Abraham Babok, and he always got up early. And he introduced to the world the power of getting up early. And so now when you get up early, you shouldn't pat yourself on the back so much because you have to thank Abraham who created the invention of the inspiration. So Ma'aseh Avot Siman Levanim is not only a magical thing, it's a spiritual thing. They infused into creation a spiritual creation. So a hidush, if we have a hidush, once someone says a hidush, that hidush, let's say it's a hidush in the Torah, it's a novel idea in the Torah, that hidush is now created into the world, and it's that much easier for you to come up with the same hidush. Sometimes I'll be thinking, I'm like, wow, what about this answer? I'll read, oh, wow, that's what the Rashba says. Wow, I said what the Rashba said. No, once the Rashba said it into existence, it's that much easier for me to take it out in a spiritual way, because it's here now. But I want to say what I said Friday night. And I don't usually like to repeat. I usually don't. As a rule, I don't ever repeat, usually. But it's very powerful. Yosef HaSadiq, look at where he is in his life and what he's doing. He goes down to Egypt. He's all alone. He had a little ark, Noah's ark, back in his father's house. The whole world around him was immoral. Yaakov Avinu had a little yeshiva, if we call it, a little sanctuary where they meditated and they were involved in holiness. And Yosef has been banished from there. And now he's in Egypt, the most immoral place, such an immoral place that even his grandfather and his grandfather and his great grandfather, they hid their wives in boxes because if the Egyptians even saw them, they would violate them. And what are they going to do with a kid who's gorgeous, Yosef? It's not easy. And so what does he do? He rises up. He's in the jail cell. He waits a very long time. He rises up. He comes second to the king. The king gives him Safinat Pa'neyah, a new name. The king gives him Asenat. The Ashkenazim call it Osnat. Ashkenazim, I don't know why you call her Osnat. I'm sorry. It's Asenat. That's the proper pronunciation of her name. Asenat. It's not Osnat. Asenat Bat Potifera, pretty ironic. Asenat, the daughter of his master. That's where he was. And now he's building a family. I remember I told you a couple of weeks ago that I had a very interesting piece on Dinah, on the rape of Dinah, and we never got into it. And we're still not going to get into it yet because it's too much. But I want to give you a little hint. We know that a lot of people say Asenat was the product of Dinah. Yeah? What is that? I love the names, as you know by now. Right? Remember all the names we do? Uncle Jack. Lot means what? You know this by now. Lot means escapee. Yeah? Lot, Malet. Mahed Himalet Shama, run. So his name, he is an escapee. That's what he does. He escapes, right? We did all this. Ephron, remember this? Ephron, who charged him a ton of money for a piece of dirt. Afan, dirt. He's a dirt bag. Ephron is a dirt bag, the original dirt man, yeah? The names always work. Betuel, we did this also. Betuel was the father of Rivka, and he was the person who was in charge. He made a rule that every virgin has to go with him first. His name was Betuel. Betulah is a virgin. It's in his name, the virgin guy. And so we have Asenat. You just keep doing it. Asenat, Ason is an accident. It's also a term used for rape. The product of rape, Asenat. Ever think about that before? Asenat, she was the product of a rape. Not a good name. We'll get into this, I promise, one day. B'li neder, actually, I don't promise. B'li neder, one day, Dinah, we'll have to get into it. There's a lot happening there. But he gets Asenat, and he decides to build a family. And as I said to the men and the women who were here, it was loud Friday night, he decides to name his son Menashe. Why? Pasuk says straight out. Hinashani Elohim, because Hashem helped me to forget my sorrows and my father's house. And so he's thanking Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, for making me forget my father's house. I'm so happy. Thank you. And so the obvious question is, why are you thanking Hashem and praising Hashem and naming your kid Forget, Menashe, the forget one, the forgetful one? Because to commemorate that you forgot your father's house. Why is that a good thing? Rabbi David Feinstein asks, last week, he's punished for forgetting his father's house. If you look at Rashi, when Eshet Potifar comes to him, the master's wife, why did Hashem send him such a Yetzer Hara like this? And Rashi says, because he was beautiful, and he was getting comfortable, and he was successful, and he was the number one guy in the house, and he started brushing his hair, the Midrash says, brushing his hair, looking in the mirror, hanging out. He's rolling, and he's a bachelor. And as Rashi says in the name of the Midrash, Hashem says to him, did you forget your father's house? Did you forget everything you learned, where you came from? And so I'm punishing you now. And so David Feinstein asks, is it good to forget your father's house, or is it bad to forget your father's house? Which one is it? And so the powerful lesson that I'm actually still thinking about, and we've been talking about it in our house for 2 days now, is this lesson of the good old times. From Elia Meir Blach, he says, some people, they love to remember the good old times. Is it a good thing to remember the good old times, or is it a bad thing to remember the good old times? The good old times is the old country, the old way, the old shul, the old life. It depends. When you remember the good old times, what does it make you do now? Does it inspire you to do good action right now in your life? Or does it cripple you because you feel like a zero compared to the good old times? If the good old times makes you feel like a zero and causes inaction, it's our job to forget the good old times, even though they were great. And even though they were religious and spiritual, it doesn't matter. Because if you're saying, why am I not going to shul? The shuls now, the shuls in America now, the shuls, you should have seen the shuls when I grew up. Wow. The most gorgeous shuls, packed to the rafters, 300 people, men, women, children. No one ever talked in the shul. That was a shul. This is a shul? Okay, so now what? You stay home? So remembering the good old times is crippling you right now. Forget the good old times. The good old times is not good for you. And it applies in marriage. It applies in your business. It applies in everything. Oh, man, I used to have such a good sales. I used to make $350,000 a year. I don't know what happened. No, I can't crack 100 anymore. So now what? Go make the 100 maybe? Or no, you're going to sit down and collect unemployment because you're not what you once was. The good old times is hurting you. Oh, we used to get along so well as a couple. Oh, we used to get along so well. What happened to us? What happened to us? Okay. Is that memory going to help us now? Are we going to therapy? Are we going to start having conversations more? Or is just going to be a barometer to make us feel how horrible our relationship is right now? It depends. And so says it's a very powerful lesson. Says Rav Blach, go ahead and remember the good old times as long as it's helpful for you right now. If it causes you to feel down in the dumps, forget the good old times. So Yosef HaSadik last week in the Pirasha, when he's a single bachelor and he's rolling and he's the main guy in the house, he forgets the good old times. Where does it lead him? To brushing his hair, to hanging out. Hashem said, hey, did you forget the good old times? You should have forgot. You should never forget the good old times, Yosef. That's the inspiration you need to stay where you're in the right lane. But now Yosef HaSadik is in a different point in his life. Now he has a family. He just had his first kid. And so now he's saying, I am living in Egypt. This is where I chose to live. I am not living in Israel in the good old times in Yaakov's house with all my brothers. That's not where I am today. I am in Egypt. I'm in a bad country. This is my situation. Remembering and keep measuring myself to what I used to have is going to bring me down. I need to do the best I can right now. And so Hashem, please help me to forget the good old times. And I'm going to name my first son Menashe. Thank you, Hashem, that you helped me to forget the good old times. And that's why I'm successful right now. And I'm building the best kosher family that I can possibly build here in Egypt. That's the difference. It all depends on what brings positive action. The Baal Tanya, he says something so interesting. He says, sometimes the Yetzer Hara will creep up on you and say, you're no good. You did this, you did that. Even this morning, you did something you shouldn't have done. Even yesterday, fresh. And you want to beat yourself up. And so he says, first of all, in our religion, vidui is scheduled into the day. I love how he says this, the Baal Tanya. He says, we have vidui as part of our schedule. We say tahanun after the Amidah for for 30 seconds, and after minha for 30 seconds after Amidah. If you do Kriyat Shema She'al Amitah, you got 30 more seconds in the evening. It's part of the schedule. The rule of the day is no vidui, says the Baal Tanya. Such a beautiful message. The rule of the day of a Jewish life is no vidui. That's why it's scheduled into the prayers. It's time for vidui. It's time to pound your chest and say, I'm so bad, I'm so bad, I'm so bad. And then it's over. And stop it. And so he says, if during the workday, he writes the workday. If during the workday, because a lot of what the Tanya, which was the Chabad Sefer, is great Sefer. A lot of what he writes for the workers. You don't really find too many Sefarim that addresses the workers. If during the workday, you start feeling a Yetzer Hara creep up on you and beating yourself up for religious reasons, it's the Yetzer Hara. And tell him, go away. I'll deal with you when it's time for Anna, after the Amidah Minha. When it's time for Anna, I'll be sad. The rule of the day is to be happy. We have scheduled moments for sadness, and when those moments are over, we're back to being happy. This is what he said. And so therefore, being down upon yourself is the biggest Yetzer Hara. You have to do the best you can right now. Once in a while, remember what it used to be, draw inspiration from what you used to have, and build your life. If it doesn't cause positive action, it's Yetzer Hara. The second thing the Baal Tanya says. Any thought, any religious Yetzer Hara who says, you should be doing this, you should be eating kosher, you should be doing, is it causing positive action? It's a very simple exercise. You ask yourself right now, okay, is this thought in my head causing positive action right now? No? Get it out of it. Even if it's for religion, get it out of there. Anything that's not causing positive action today is just crippling you. And in the words I used, which is the words of Reb Lach, he says, some people are so busy trying to revive the memory of the past that they're paralyzing their present. We have to know when to use each one. And we learn this from Yosef HaSadik. And to tie it into Chanukah, because they are related. Chanukah, first of all, the word Chanukah, as I said, the Ben Ish Chai says it should be called Nahukah. In the Megillat Esther, it says, Hayamim asher nahu bahem haYehudim. But Purim, this is the day where they rested from the war. Nahu is rest. Nah. Chanukah means they camped on the 25th. What did they camped? Who camped? It should be Nahukah, says the Ben Ish Chai. And he has a couple of reasons. The main reason why Ben Ish Chai says, and this is in his work on the Gemara, he writes the main reason is if they named it Nahukah, which they should have, people would think, it's a day of rest. We're not allowed to work. No, you're allowed to work on Chanukah. To avoid this mistake, the rabbis switched the letters around and named it Chanukah. That's what the Ben Ish Chai says. Also, he says they like the fact that the chet, the ches, the 8 is in the beginning of the word. Ben Ish Chai writes. Zeh Shimshon, he says the main root of the word Chanukah is chinuch, training. Because Chanukah is all about right now, we're starting our new beginning. Forget about the past. What are we doing now? Chanukah HaMizbeach, the inauguration of the Beit HaMikdash. What are we doing now? Chanukah HaBayit. We have a brand new house. We're starting off now. And so the lesson of Chanukah is the same lesson of Yosef. The Hashmonaim, they did the same thing Yosef did. They were in a rotten situation. The best we have. The second Beit HaMikdash was nothing compared to the first Beit HaMikdash. Nothing. The Zikanim would cry, the Gemara says. The Zikanim, the elders would cry in the second Beit HaMikdash. They would cry, if only you guys saw the first one. And so they're fighting for a second-rate temple, and they want it back. And when they get it back, it's in shambles. The Mishnah says that the Yevanim, the Greeks, when they came in, they put holes in the curtains, in the walls. There were like dividers. They put holes. They put 13 holes. Literally, it's in holes. It's in shambles. Imagine the mess. What are you fighting for? And that's what we're celebrating. When we make a celebration, imagine, God forbid, someone gets your house, wrecks the place from top to bottom, graffiti, destroys the place. You finally get them out. Let's make a celebration. This is in shambles. It's nothing to what it used to be. As I quoted on Friday night, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, what was the Hanukkah miracle menorah? What do we picture? We always glorify the picture in our head. So let's imagine what happened after the Hanukkah miracle. We finally got it. So they pick up the menorah. Oh, the lovely menorah. We got it back. And they light it. And that's the Hanukkah miracle. That's not the Hanukkah miracle. That's not what happened. False. It's not what happened. What happened was the place was in shambles. They didn't have a dime. And so they said, wow, we got the temple back. Let's light the Hanukkah. Let's light the menorah. What menorah? And so what do we have? Let's make one. And so the first opinion in the Gemara Avodah Zarah, they said, we can't afford anything. There's some pieces of wood. And so they made a wood, like a Home Depot menorah. The kids do it for Hanukkah activities. A wood menorah. This was the miracle of Hanukkah. This is what we're remembering for thousands of years. We won the victory. They lit a wooden Home Depot menorah. That's one opinion. Second opinion was they didn't even have that. They were looking for metal poles. Some people say they found the spears. Well, we have these spears. We just used them in the war. Let's use these. All we got. Some people say they found some metal poles in the ground. Put the metal poles together. How'd they connect them? Oh, they melted them together. They strung them together. Who knows what it looked like? Gemara says they covered it with tin. They covered it with tin. They lit it. Happy Hanukkah. Imagine your Hanukkah menorah that you light tonight is nicer than the one, more expensive than the one they lit when the miracle was. And they celebrated, and they said, this is a holiday. Gemara says later on they got some more money. They said, okay, I think we can afford to get rid of the pole tin menorah, and they upgraded to silver. Sometime later, they got even more money, they upgraded to gold. Took them a while. Yet, if they were looking back at the good old days, Hanukkah would not be a holiday. Hanukkah would be a Tisha B'Av. It would be sad. What a tragedy. Is all we have left? No. We're not looking at the good old days. We're not looking backwards. We're looking forwards. What is the best thing we can do right now? Get some poles and get some tin and light the menorah. Let's do it. We look forward. We're happy. That's the best we can do. Menashe ki nashani Elohim. Thank you, Hashem, for making us forget. This is the lesson of Hanukkah. We picked up the pieces. If you look at Yosef, Yosef is also the one who epitomizes, he copied his father. It's no wonder Yaakov loved Yosef. Yosef epitomizes going out there into the darkness, going out there into Galut, into a foreign land, into an immoral place, and succeeding, and keeping the kosher home. Not easy to do, Yosef. He took after his father. His father went to Lavan's house. Some people say his father went for training. There's always those 14 missing years the Gemara talks about in Megillah. There's 14 missing years, as we know, between Yaakov's exit from Esav until his entrance to Lavan. So what did he do for the 14 years? He went to the yeshiva of Shem ve'Evet. First of all, we're picturing a kollel and our shtenders. I mean, we have to grow up a little bit. He went to the yeshiva of Shem ve'Evet. He went to, what was the school all about? It was a school of how to succeed outside of the family's house. There's a big bad world out there, and no one believes in monotheism out there. And so you're going to go out there, and everyone's a pagan. He had 14 years of training. So some people want to say, so did Yosef. A lot of people start at 3 years old teaching their kids, and he was 17 years old when he got kidnapped and sent away. He had 14 years, just like his father. 14 years of training to go out there into the big bad world. And he succeeded. Yosef was a model for all of us. As we said last week, Yosef is all of us. Remember the Ben Ish Chai? Yosef goes down here, little neshamala, with the Ben Ish Chai. He goes down here into this world, and he does what he has to do. That's all of us, wherever we are. And so Yosef, if there was ever a person to epitomize going out there and not being influenced by the outside world, as we would say in our terms, remaining an Orthodox Jew, remaining an ultra-Orthodox Jew, that's Yosef. This is what the Hashmonaim were all about. The Hanukkah story was all about orthodoxy versus reform. Hellenization was everywhere. Everyone was becoming Greek. Everyone was assimilating. Even the Hashmonaim family themselves eventually succumbed to it and they themselves are gone. Ashmonaim family are all gone. However, there was a momentary victory, and these 5 rabbis, these were the ultra-Orthodox, these were the Haredim rabbis. I heard someone say one time, be careful before you celebrate Hanukkah, because if you were there, we're not sure which side you would be on. These were 5 ultra-Orthodox guys fighting against the tide of assimilation and Hellenization, which was rampant. Everyone loved the Greeks. Also heard another person say, the Greeks adored the body and worshiped the body, and that's why we eat donuts on Hanukkah. Right? We do the opposite. To ruin this body as much as we can. The Jewish body is a purposely anti-Greek. Yeah. So these 5 guys were fighting against assimilation, just like Yosef HaSadiq. They went into the darkness. Hoshech, as I said Friday night. Hoshech, darkness. Shachach, forgetting. We say in the Al Nisim, the Sfaradim say, L'shakiham Toratach. They wanted to make us forget our Torah. The Ashkenazim say, L'hashkicham Toratach. Yeah? L'hashkicham Toratach. Same thing. They wanted us to forget. Darkness is forgetting. And we fight that by lining it up. Like I said Friday. Hoshech, Zeh Shimshon. Hoshech is 328. Same gematria as forgetting. 328. Shachach, forget. 328. Hoshech, 328. How do you forget? Being in darkness, you forget the Torah. So Zeh Shimshon says, like I said, you take away the afilah. Afilah is darkness. Look at the Makat Hoshech. In Egypt, Vahi Hoshech Afilah, it was darkness. Afilah is darkness. You take away the darkness, which is 116, subtract it from the 328 of the Hoshech. What do you have left? 212, Ora. Ora is light. 212, we said that number. 212 is how many years the Beit HaMikdash stood before Antiochus came. He came in year 213. 212, Ora, light. And then came Antiochus and made it dark in year 213. He came on 25th of Kislev. It was day to date. It was to the date. We lost the temple on the same exact date on the calendar that we got it. The 25th of Kislev, on the same day, he took the temple from us. And so therefore, people ask the question, why is Hanukkah different? That on Hanukkah, we have this whole mehadrin mina mehadrin. We have mahmid, the actual mitzvah is to light 1 candle. The Gemara says, but if you want to be mehadrin, you want to do the mehadrin, like the food label, mehadrin. You want to do the nice thing? Light 1 for each person. You want to do the nice of the nice thing? Then you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 candles, as we do, 1 every night, adding. Where else do we find mehadrin, mehadrin, mehadrin? Where do we find this? You want to do a mehadrin? Sukkah, shofar. Do this. You want to have the even nice shofar? Blow 13 blasts the first day and 2 hours. No, the mitzvah is the mitzvah. Hanukkah is special. We have layers and we're all strict. You won't find a Jew out there that's lighting 1 candle on their window. Not that I know of. We all do the mehadrin mina mehadrin, all of us. Why? That's what this holiday is all about. We want to go all the way against the assimilation and be strict. The Gemara asks, not the Gemara, the Rishonim. The Gemara says they found 1 jar of oil, as we all know. Why am I pausing? Because it's a loaded topic. I'll give you a little taste, but that's it. There's so much written on this. They found 1 jar of oil because Timeu kol hashemanim. They made all the oil tameh. The Rishonim all go crazy on this Gemara. What do you mean they made all the oil tameh? There's so many questions they ask on it. First of all, if you get into the complex laws of Tum'ah, it's really hard for a non-Jew to make oil tameh. Number 1. Number 2, even if all the oil was tameh, Tum'ah hutra b'tzibur. There's a halakha. If most of the nation is tameh, if most of the oil is tameh, then we do away with this qualification that you have to have pure oil. If they would have lit impure oil in Hanukkah, it would have been kosher. So what are we going crazy about this jar of oil? And why did Hashem have to make a miracle for something that's not even halakha? Again, the halakha would have been, there's a halakha. Tum'ah hutzah b'tzibur. This whole thing that the oil becomes impure when the non-Jews defile it is rabbinic. And so the rabbis can give you a halakha and take it away. And so the rabbis would say the halakha is, if it's for the tzibur and most of the oil is impure, we remove our ban for the impure oil, and you can literally light impure oil in the Beit HaMikdash. It would have been kosher. And so why did Hashem have to make a miracle to find the jar of oil when the halakha is you're allowed to light any of the oils? And this is the answer they give. Because Hashem saw that we weren't satisfied with just the law. We weren't satisfied with the bare bones minimum. We wanted to go all the way. Mehadrin mina mehadrin. And so Hashem says, you want to go all the way? I'm going to make a miracle for you to let you go all the way. This is a holiday about being ultra orthodox. That's what this holiday is all about. Not settling for the minimum. We're going all the way. We didn't have to find the oil. Hashem didn't have to give us the miracle. Yet we want it. The menorah, we didn't have the menorah. We want to make a makeshift menorah. We want to do the best we can. This is a holiday commemorating going as much as we possibly can. That's why it's still here, this holiday of Chanukah. Which is why it's ironic that these days Chanukah is like the most beloved holiday by conservative and reform and the non-Orthodox people. But if they were there, I said first if you were there, if they were there, I'm not sure whose side they would be on. 5 crazy rabbis fighting against everybody? You go with the rabbis? And so Chanukah, the lesson of Chanukah is tied to Yosef very closely. Just like Yosef is the king of going into the darkness and succeeding and deciding that we do the best we can right now, even if it used to be better, it doesn't matter. It takes a certain fortitude. So too the Hashmonaim. They go out there into the darkness. They say we're lighting whatever we need to light. We're doing the best we can. This is the best we can. That's it, finished. Chanukah means a beginning. Chinuch. We're starting fresh. That's the lesson of this day, lesson of this holiday. The Pri Tzaddik, Reb Tzaddik HaKohen, he said something very interesting. He says, it's also very cryptic. He says, based on the Zohar, that Yosef is the anti-assimilation person. This is his word, the Reb Tzaddik. Yosef, not anti-assimilation. Yosef is the anti-assimilation. And there's a tradition that the berachot of the Shmona Esrei, the 18 berachot in our Amidah, there's 3 in the beginning for the avot, for the fathers, and there's 3 at the end for thanks. That's 6. That leaves 12 in the middle. 1 is for each tribe. And it says Reb Tzaddik HaKohen, which blessing is for Yosef? Laminim v'lamalshinim. Lamalshinim, for the heretics. Interesting, from Reb Tzaddik HaKohen. Now, if you try to work out the blessings, I figured out my own way to understand this. And so we'll try to do this by heart. I might need to see do it. Atah Kadosh is part of the first 3. Atah Honen L'Adam Da'at. If we go in order, you with me here? If we go in order of the tribes, do Le'ah first and her maidservant, Zilpah, and then we'll do Rachel and her maidservant, Bilhah. Let's see if each one gets a blessing. Now we added another blessing into the middle. So there's not 12 in the middle. The heretics was added later on, so there's 13 in the middle. Yosef ended up being split into 2, so that works for him. So let's try it by heart. Yeah, let's try it by heart. Atah Honen L'Adam Da'at, you give knowledge, Reuven. What's the next one? Yeah, see, do it, Yotzi. What's the next one? I'm not going to even attempt this by heart. That's Reuven. Atah Honen would be Reuven. Let's keep going. You giving it to me?
Oh.
Yeah, let's do it. Atah Honen L'Adam Da'at. I found this fascinating. Now, the Reb Tzaddik doesn't say what I'm saying right now. He just says cryptically, if you figure it out, Yosef is Laminim. But I think I figured out how everyone works out, and it's based on the Zohar. Atah Honen L'Adam Da'at, you give knowledge, would be Reuven, the Bechor. Shimon, Hashivenu Abinu Totecha, Teshuvah. Well, that makes sense, because Shimon and Levi, they destroyed Shechem, and Yaakov bashed them over the head. So Teshuvah would be for Shimon. Levi, Silah lanu avinu kihatanu. That makes sense. Let's keep going. Yehuda, Re'ena be'onyenu u'mehele ga'olenu ge'ula. Yehuda, Ge'ula. Yehuda is Mashiach, David HaMelech. Again, this is me. This is my words, but I think it works out. And then we have Yisachar is Refe'enu Hashem v'nafeh, Refu'at HaNefesh u'fat HaGuf. Says Reb Tzaddik, Refu'ah is not only a healing of the body, it's a healing of the soul. Yisachar is a Torah learner, healing for the soul. Zevulun is the guy who makes all the mullah, yeah? Zevulun, Barech Aleinu. Bless us with money. Zevulun, it fits right in. Now, that is the first Le'az kids. Now we go to Zilpah. We have who? We have Zilpah, we have Dan, and Naphtali. Yeah? No, am I saying it right? Danani Elohim was Rachel, no? You have a Chumash? Who knows this? Danani Elohim was who? Who said this? Dan and Naphtali. Gad and Asher was no, Dan Naphtali is Rachel. Gad and Asher. We have over here Tekai b'shofar gadol l'cherotenu. V'kabesenu, collect us all. Gad. Zilpah now. Zilpah is part of the Az kids. Gad, Yedud Yegudenu, all as one unit. Bring us all together. Kabetzenu Yahad Me'avad, bring us all together. Gad. Asher, Hashiba Shofetenu Kibideshuna, the judge would be Asher. And now we switch off. So we did Leah and Zilpah, and now we go to Rachel and Bilhah. Rachel, Yosef. Menashe is his first one. Lamini v'lamalshini malti tikva. For the heretics. Menashe, his first one. Yosef is anti-heretics. Yosef is for the Orthodox out there and against the big bad people. Next one, Ephraim, Allah Sadiqim, Allah Hasidim. Yeshua ben Nun is Ephraim. That's Rachel's two kids. And then we have Dan and Naphtali. Tishkom b'toch Yerushalayim mincha. No, sorry, Binyamin. What are we talking about? Binyamin, her second kid. With me? So Yosef had two. Menashe, Laminim, Ephraim, Allah Sadiqim. And then Binyamin, Tishkom b'toch Yerushalayim mincha. Binyamin lived in Yerushalayim. Binyamin, part of the Beit HaMikdash, was in his territory. He shared it with Yehuda. So Binyamin is praying for Yerushalayim. Now we keep going, and we have last two. Dan and Naphtali. Dan, I'm not sure how that fits in. I didn't figure it all out yet. And then we have, and Naphtali, the last one. And so Shumei Tevila. And so therefore, it's actually pretty interesting. Each one of the middle 12, which is now 13, will correspond to one tribe. Yosef, we know for sure from the Rav Tzaddik. The rest is just me. You can take it or leave it. But Yosef from Rav Tzaddik would be against Laminim v'Lamalshinim. So Yosef is the one who is against the newcomers, the reformers. This is why Yosef, as we said in the beginning, is Gematria Atiyoches. The power of Yosef is what's empowering us to succeed in the Hashmonaim even later on by Chanukah. It's the same fight. They're just copying Yosef. It's the same fight. Semach, last piece. The Gemara says, we did not learn this in the men's Gemara class because we're finished. We didn't get to it. But the Gemara says the menorah goes on which side? The Chanukah, the Chanukiah, goes on the left side of the door. Why, says the Gemara? Because you have the mezuzah on the right side, and you have what in the middle? Huh? No, in your house. The Gemara says, put the menorah on the left side. Why? Because on the right side you have the mezuzah, and on the middle side you have you, and you're wearing tzitzit. If you're a man. And on the left side you have the menorah. You should be surrounded on all sides by mitzvot. Mezuzah, tzitzit, Chanukah. If you spell this out, says the Ben Ish Chai, tzitzit, mezuzah, Chanukah, Tzemach. Tzemach means Mashiach. The word Mashiach, our Messiah, is not really called Mashiach in our Bible. You're not going to find one day Mashiach's going to come. It doesn't exist. But the word Tzemach does. Ve'abdi Tzemach, my servant Tzemach is going to come. Tzemach means to sprout. Et Tzemach David Avdecha, we pray in the Hamidah. You should sprout David. Tzemach is the name for Mashiach. Some people say Tzemach is the name of Mashiach. His actual name. And so it says in Beis Hai, Tzitzit, Mezuzah, chanukah, tzemach, you do it right, you help to bring the redemption and get back to where we were when this miracle happened. But hold on a second. Rabbi Yitzhak Dweck, my Rosh Yeshiva, he writes in his Sefer, you got to make sure, hold on, that you do it the right way. And you spell the word the right way. Because if you spell the word the wrong way, and you go, chanukah, mezuzah, tzitzit, you're spelling hametz. Hametz we don't want. What's the difference? The difference is, how do you go about perfecting this world and your house? Where do you start? You start with the outside, or do you start with yourself? If you start with the outside, so the chanukah is for the outside, it's for the people out there on the street. And then we have the mezuzah, it's for the people coming into my house from the street. And then we have the tzitzit, which is me inside my house. Hametz. Stop trying to fix the whole world and then fix yourself last. You become hametz. How do you go about it the right way? I start with myself, tzitzit, saddi. And then I go work on my entrance to my house. Once I fix my own house, the mim. Once I fix that, then I preach to the world. Hayat, tzemach, mashiach. We have to do our avodah inside out, not outside in. And this is Rabbi Dweck in his book where he writes, and so therefore Hanukkah is another lesson. We work on ourselves. The same lesson as Yosef HaSadiq. I don't remember everything else. I focus on this. What do I have to do right now? What is the best I can do right now? One last nugget. It's not related to anything, but I found it fascinating. Also, Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen says this. Does he? Maybe the Ezra John. He says, the Hashmonaim, they got a lot of flack because they took over the kingship. Kohanim are not supposed to be kings. There's no Hashmonaim anymore. They're all gone. Hashem wiped out the whole family. Kohanim are not supposed to be kings. So where do they get the guts to do this? And not only the guts, where do they get the power and the confidence to do this? And it's found this fascinating. You know what he says? From their great-grandma. Everything comes from a woman in this religion. Everything. From their great-grandma. Because Aharon HaKohen was married to whom? Elisheva bat Aminadav. Nachshon bin Aminadav's sister. The prince of Yehuda, Nachshon, his sister Elisheva, was from the royal family. And she married Aharon. Aharon was married to Elisheva. And so it says Reb Tzadok, I believe Reb Tzadok says this. The Hashmonaim said, what are we going to do? No one's stepping up to the plate besides for us, but we're Kohanim. Let's get the power from our grandma. At least our grandma is a royal princess from the royal tribe of Yehuda, Elisheva. They kept that in their mind, and that's what powered them to have confidence to do this job, Elisheva. And so at the end of the day, like everything, we thank the grandma, always. The bottom line lesson is as follows, as we said. Hanukkah is a time, yes, we look fondly back. In a big picture, in a small picture, like I said, in our job, in our relationship, in our shuls, in our classes, everything was amazing, fantastic. It's a very simple question. Are all these memories helping or hurting? If they're helping us right now, great. If they're hurting, stop it. And with relationships, especially with relationships. Why are you bringing it up? God forbid, lo aleinu. A person's wife, God forbid, should never happen to anyone here. She got a sickness. Something happened. She can't cook anymore, the lady. Your food used to be so amazing on Friday night. What are you doing? What are you doing? Right now, here we are. She can't do it anymore. Why are you bringing up the good old days? Do what you can right now. With relationships is always the most important. We remember if it spurs good action now. Otherwise, minasher, forget about it. That's my main lesson from Hanukkah this year. Everyone, Chodesh Tov, Hanukkah Sameach. See you next time.